All right. So welcome to November's new member meetup. We do these once a month. I think it's the third Friday every month. And it's at 1 p.m. Eastern time. It's an opportunity for not just new members, but also some old friends to join and share what they're working on and maybe help some of the newer members get oriented and find ways to contribute. I do want to introduce two members here in the meeting today. We've got Kevin Dardick, who is one of our interns. Maybe Kevin, you can introduce yourself. He's going to be working specifically on orientation with us, which is great.
Yes, so my internship is about improving the onboarding process. So if any of you have had any confusion with joining the hub, hopefully I will be making that better within the next couple of months.
Sorry, I'm on mute. Kevin is joining from Brandeis University. And we've also got John Scholl, who's co-founder of the e-NABLE community. John, if you want to introduce yourself.
Yeah, hi. I'm coming to you live from Rochester, New York. I have been involved with e-NABLE from the early days of the non-organization that has that name. Work had gone on before me, developing the first 3D printable open source prosthetic. When I came on board, we sort of turned it into an online movement, which is happy now to welcome you among its ranks.
Great. And let's see, maybe we can go around. I'll introduce myself and then I'll pass it on. So my name is Ben Rubin. I've been involved with e-NABLE for the last few years, working on the media coordination project. It's something that I created a proposal for. It didn't exist, and I thought it would be helpful for this decentralized, distributed community to have more connections between the different chapters and projects. So I proposed it, and it was approved, and I've been working on it the last 2 years. And I'm coming from Rochester, New York. Maybe I can pass it to Ben Tucker.
Hello, I'm Ben Tucker. I live in Sarasota, Florida. Recently joined e-NABLE just maybe a month ago. It's actually a follow-on to a project I started 50 years ago in my senior project in university, which was an artificial hand. But back then we didn't have the materials or electronics to achieve this, so it's nice to return and with 3D printing be able to do something that was started so long ago. And wanted to compliment all of you from e-NABLE. The site and information and feedback is really great. You guys are right on top of it. Thank you.
A bold claim. And Ben, what have you been doing since for the intervening 50 years?
Well, I'm retired now, but I was in the energy field. So I started off as a nuclear engineer, or actually plasma physicist, with hopes of doing fusion, but that never came to be yet. So ended up my career working on solar and renewables, but basically it's been an effort to try to build sustainable futures.
Well, don't stop. I'm reversing with you. I've been doing prosthetics now since e-NABLE in 2016, but I'm now getting very exercised like everyone else on climate and alternative energy. Maybe we'll get to compare notes on that sometime.
I'll put in a plug. There's a great website and software package you might want to play around with, and it's called Climate Interactive. And it's a program developed up at MIT with some other folks that allow you to play with different strategies. And it gives you about 20 or 30 levers to pull, and you can see how the climate future might unfold through the end of this century.
That comes at just the right time. Thank you for that recommendation. I'll look into it.
But since then.
And you're supposed to pass the torch to William or to Lynn.
Okay. William, I see you're still muted. You need to unmute. Or Dr. Miles.
Yeah. So I'm a professor of biology at Wake Forest University in North Carolina. We're about 90 miles west of Duke in Carolina, UNC. And I am getting close to retirement, probably next year. And I'm looking for what I want to do to volunteer for.
Cool.
And I'm a builder at Waker Space, which is a local maker space at Wake Forest.
Well, that's great. What kind of building, what kind of biology did you teach?
I taught biomimicry.
Oh,
My last course that was, I also teach physiology and animal behavior.
in my first academic career at Haverford College, I taught biological psychology and animal behavior with occasional excursions into biomimicry.
Great.
And my interest actually throughout, because it was psychology, not evolutionary biology, but it was evolution as a model of intelligent and adaptive systems. And somehow I then went from that on to technology and on to whatever the hell this is. But there's a unifying core to it that I keep trying to recover.
Sounds good. So far, I've involved undergraduates in independent studies, and they're building hands.
Oh, they are.
And it's been a lot of fun so far.
Cool. Great, good to meet you.
I'll pass it on to Lynn.
Well, thank you so much, William. You're so close to me. I didn't know you was at Wake Forest. Oh yeah, so my name is Lynn Miles. I am actually working for I do two different things, but I'm here with you all working with a STEM program at Fayetteville State University. And I was tasked with the option of presenting the e-NABLE, making the prosthetic hands to students in STEM. So I am 100% new. So I am looking to get as much information as possible. And maybe in this call, you can help me because I've had some issues of just trying to figure out how to start. Where, what do I do? How do I do it? Where's, like, I'm on the hub and I'm on here, but just to find my logical step of operations just to get things moving is the one thing that I seem not to be able to grasp yet.
Well, that's why we're here, and that's why it's good that you're here. Although I got to say, according to Ben, it's all self-explanatory. So what are you complaining about?
I don't know.
I'm well aware of this challenge. Lynn,
I have
what
lots
is
of time. That's the difference, maybe.
There you go. So Lynn,
Yes.
what are you studying, and what was the name of the school?
Oh, the name of the school is Fayetteville State University. It's in Fayetteville, North Carolina. If you're familiar with military bases, it's near Fort Bragg Military Base as well as Pope Air Force Base.
Cool. And what state?
North Carolina. We're in Fayetteville.
No, I'm sorry. It's something State University.
Fayetteville.
Fayetteville. All right.
Oh yeah, can you see my shirt? Oh, I'm sorry.
Got it.
Maybe it's opposite.
Got
Yeah, so my study, in terms of my background, I'm in math and physics, then I went to public health, and then I went to international psychology. And now I'm back. I actually am an alumnus of this university. So now I'm back helping STEM students.
How cool is that? So your PhD is in public health?
My PhD is in international psychology.
International psychology.
All right. So
I have a
basically,
PhD in psychology too, and I don't know what that term, I've never heard that term before.
it's new, and it's basically looking at marginalized populations globally. My focus was organization and development, and then how we can create organizations in a global world to help marginalized communities. It's basically summarizing.
Well,
You're in the
then
right place.
absolutely in the right place. That's great.
Yeah, and I did my research in Ghana, so that was even better.
Interesting. Okay.
Yes.
We've actually got a new member from Ghana this week or last week. So
Oh,
um,
good.
I can share how you guys can keep up with new members
Okay.
later on. But that's wonderful. And in terms of getting started, quick start stuff, let me share with you a link to, well, let's see, I shared this earlier, I think. The new member space on the hub
Okay.
it is something that everybody is added to as soon as they register. Have you registered to the hub already?
Yes, I'm in the hub.
Okay, so here's the new member space, and there's a, let's see, there's a video that gives some quick orientation of how to use the hub, basically. And that could be a place to start. I know that's something that Kevin and Allie and I talked about as a good video. It's a little bit long. You can fast forward through it. John's got his hand up, and I'll share the link in the chat.
Okay.
I'm doing some user research on Kevin's behalf. Raise your hand if you explored the new member space. Okay. And if you watched the video.
I think so.
Okay, good to know. All right.
Okay, so this,
So Lynn has already looked at those spaces. Lynn, I wanted to ask you what's your short-term and long-term goal with us, so we know how to point you in the right direction.
So my short-term goal is I want to start making either the wrist or elbow prosthetic. So I would like to start that as soon as possible. I think the questions that I have are, I know that in reading it said that I needed to be, I guess, once you make a prototype, it needs to be approved. How does that happen? What is the best printer? Because I've researched printers, but I also feel like it's best to get information from those who have already been doing it to know which one works best for them, or at least within the confines of what we're doing. And then I want to be able to create it where if we can start making bigger models. I know there's talk about arms and legs, just be able to expand that to other extremities. That's the long-term goal, but right now my immediate goal is just to be able to find the best printer for what is needed, being able to make it, just that part. So if I can get that done,
That's
that
great.
would
So
be.
you want to start by figuring out the craft and making the devices,
Yes,
which is
sir.
a fine and common pathway to begin. Do you have access? Is there a makerspace at Fayetteville?
A makerspace app?
Is there a makerspace at your university or a 3D printer that you already have access to?
No, we don't.
So have you been charged with buying one for the university?
Yes.
Lucky you. All right.
And I've got authorization for 2.
Nice. And so, if you don't mind, this is sort of an interesting story. Who gave you that authorization and what is their goal?
So I work for what they call an S4 program, and their goal is to support students and faculty in STEM. And it's also to create research opportunities for students. So this was a project that was potentially presented to another professor that wasn't able to get it off the ground. So we have grants that support research. They give stipends to students to do any kind of STEM research, just anything within STEM. So they have given me the authorization to do this. So they presented the topic to me. So they said, run with it.
Well, that's great. And are you also teaching courses?
I'm not teaching courses. I'm just strictly student mentor, student engagement. We're writing manuscripts on flipped learning, how to teach mathematics and computer science in a different way. So we're writing manuscripts on flipped learning, and also they're doing a manuscript on what we call adaptive assessment math-based class, where they're giving students what they call enhancement sessions, which is more like tutoring sessions throughout the semester, and how by providing these additional enhancement sessions, how that increases their overall grade at the end than just going a traditional lecture class.
Okay, so now I see Ben has put himself on mute and is off video, which is okay, Ben, if you can hear this. But I'll,
I'm here.
and now I know why. But Lynn, that was very helpful. Here's what I want to do. You don't have to participate. You don't even have to agree. But I would like to help. I would like to make sure that we can help you get up to speed.
Yes.
There are some educational materials that Ben can make available that you can A, learn from, and then B, possibly use in your coaching and mentoring, or even workshopping to get other students involved. And then C, having inducted you into the cult of e-NABLE, I really would like to be able to tap into your international psychology and remote experience in Ghana, because this whole issue of sort of how to reach out to precisely those kinds of groups, and for that matter, doing it with people who've got the right experience and orientation, you're really potentially a very welcome and valuable resource who we will exploit the hell out of if you give us half a chance.
It sounds like I like this type of exploitation.
All right, good.
I don't know about that word, John.
I know.
In terms of e-NABLE, so it's an open source community effort. So the volunteers that are involved are working on open source designs, but also I think a lot of the materials that are created are also, we're really encouraging people to be sharing those materials back. So there's an effort right now to try to get more open source educational materials. In terms of educators, there's people that we can connect you to. I'm looking at the new member space and trying to see if any of the workshop videos specifically talk about 3D printers. I think we do have one from Jeremy. Let's see. 3D printing best practices for e-NABLE volunteers with Jeremy. I think he talks about specific printers there. My guess is that your first step is going to be understanding the equipment and the space and setting that up. Is that right? Or do you need to propose it first?
I think all the above.
Yeah, that's a good video to start with, in part because Jeremy is extremely helpful, and he also happens to run, but he's not pushy about it, 3D Universe, which sells 3D printers and materials at a discount to enable volunteers. So you're by no means, you can get really good advice from him without buying from him, and he may well be able to point you in the right direction. So watch the video and proceed from there. That'll help you with getting the basic equipment together.
Yeah, and I've added the link in the chat.
I see that.
You'll see if you scroll down, there's a section called Old Friends, and there's a link to his profile too. So you can feel free to contact him directly. there's also a whole section with related links. So there's the slides from the presentation, and then there's also a Phoenix hand assembly tutorial, just things that he references during the talk.
Okay.
Here is a link to our underdeveloped e-NABLE education space on the hub,
Okay.
which includes a post from November, which includes the 3D Universe Education Exchange, and a lesson plan from PBS called How Students Can Invent Adaptive Devices like 3D Printed Prosthetics. And Ben can give you several other educational resources that have been developed, which you can make use of.
Yeah.
So those are first steps. You know,
Okay.
you don't have to be a brand new member to come back to next month's new member meetup. So,
Okay.
and you don't have to wait for the new member meetup to ask your next round of questions. That's what the hub is for.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I was going to say the same thing. As you are watching these videos and collecting questions specific to getting things set up at your university, feel free to put a post in the forum. There's the main forum. I'll put a link to that. And
Yeah, I found that been very helpful. I've gotten a lot of different answers back, so that has been very helpful.
That's great.
great. Yeah, so feel free to use that as your sort of the community feedback connection. So this is the main forum.
Okay.
You know, I have one more thought before we give Ben and William a chance. Kevin, is it possible that Lynn should be pointed to the prototype launchpad just so that she can get from it what she might and then give you feedback about how it's lacking? Or do you think it's too rough to point her to at this point?
I will have to think about that and get back to you, John and Lynn, because that's
the right response.
Good idea, but I was thinking the same thing, but I will have to look through and see if it's ready.
That's great.
Right. And the subtext to that, Lynn, is that Kevin and a previous intern, Isabella, are working on trying to make it easier, because it is this whole wave of new information. You know, there's these printers and then trying to figure out how to work it into a sort of a curriculum and learning standards and all that stuff.
The one other thing I was going to say is that with regard to getting your hand certified, you should also look at badges, because that describes a well worked out path, including the process for getting your hand approved badge, which I know is on your radar.
Right. So that process hopefully will be a little bit more streamlined, and you would be a wonderful person to give some feedback to us and to Kevin specifically on as he works on that, because you've got such a clear mission. So we might invite you to be an early pilot of that.
Okay. I got plenty of feedback right now.
Good.
Yay. Amazing.
It's really great to have you here, Lynn.
Oh, thank you.
William, I saw you unmuted yourself.
Yes. I was going to offer Lynn, since we're both in North Carolina, if you would like to come and look at the maker space at Wake Forest and the machines that we used to make our hands, and if that's useful to you. Now, you are in Fayetteville, right? I mean, that's where
I'm a little everywhere. I've actually, I'm just in Fayetteville today just because we had a STEM event. I'm only in Fayetteville on Mondays. The rest of the week I'm in Charlotte, North Carolina. But I also
easier actually.
Right. So I come to pre-pandemic. I used to come to Winston-Salem once a week.
Oh my goodness.
Right. So yeah, you're only an hour away. I'll be ecstatic to come and visit. Not a far drive. We can coordinate that. I have no problem.
That'll be very, very useful, Lynn. That's great.
Yes.
Thank you, William.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
And actually, Lynn, if you take notes on the setup that they have, that William has for the Waker space. I'd love to see what the setup is. I could potentially help share that. We're sort of working on what are different models for maker spaces, so that could be really useful for us too.
Okay, I could do that.
That'd be great.
The my question, I'm kind of interested or in considering starting a chapter, and we're interfacing with something called Brenner's Children's Hospital in Winston-Salem. And my question is, do you get pushback from the medical community ever?
Yes. I can tell you a little bit more. Well, so the answer is yes, in particular the prosthetists. Often the surgeons and the occupational therapists are very enthusiastic about what we do. But in some ways that's because we're not encroaching on their turf the way we are encroaching on the turf of the prosthetists. And by the way, in the early days when e-NABLE was getting a lot of publicity, it did so in part because of a headline that said volunteer organization makes prosthetics for free that prosthetists charge $40,000 for. It was a distortion of several interesting stories, and it really got their goat. So there are all sorts of understandable reasons why the professional prosthetists are often quite ambivalent about e-NABLE. On the other hand, it's been some years since, frankly, we've had those kinds of interactions. Our devices have matured since then, and I suspect that they all now recognize that we were leading the way on methodologies that they are incorporating into their own practice. A responsible looking gentleman like you should, I think, cautiously but actively reach out. And I think it really is time for us to see if we can develop some relationships with hospitals and medical professionals at various places.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. I have discovered the physical therapists, and I'm actually making better strides there than with the Children's Hospital.
Well, that may reflect the whole social structure of the industry. But the PTs and the ATs, you know, they're the ones who really focus on problem solving for the patients, which in some ways is what we do also. And well, of course, prosthetists do that as well. They are world-class specialists at making these specific devices in the same way, perhaps, that doctors focus on diseases, but nurses focus on patients. So the ATs and the PTs are really very good allies and can probably help you find a sympathetic prosthetist if there's one to be found.
Right, right. I have another question, if I've got time. There's a map on your website that shows people in need of prosthetics, but I was kind of disappointed in the number of people and the number of people who are trying to help them. Like for each one I found, there were like a dozen people who had already said they'd be willing to help. So I'm not quite sure the best place or the best way to find a client.
Ben, do you want to take one? I didn't mean to dominate the conversation, or I can do it.
Sure. You know, it's an interesting challenge that we have. I think in the past, there's been sort of a maker-heavy community online that want to 3D print hands that will be used, but don't necessarily have a direct relationship to device users or organizations that are supporting device users. John's comments before about partnerships with medical professionals and hospitals is really a key part of the equation that tends to be missing in in previous collaborations, there'd be schools that would make a lot of hands and want them to go to somebody, anybody, but it doesn't really work that way. You really have to be thinking about, just like an occupational therapist does customization work. Often it's, 5 or 6 different iterations until you really find something that fits. It's a different kind of process than, a sort of an assembly line, although that can be really an important part in the educational process. John, I saw you had your hand up.
Yeah, I was just going to say it is true that we have an oversupply of makers and an undersupply of recipients these days. That's a true fact. And so your outreach to PTs and ATs and the hospitals is exactly the right thing to do. In some ways, it's a good problem to have. In other ways, it's a bad problem to have. But it's one of the challenges we have in the United States. In other parts of the world, there are not enough makers, and there are lots of people who need and want hands.
Right. That's a really great point that John is making. I think the we is different depending on the moment. So e-NABLE being decentralized and distributed, there's about 200 chapters, but there's thousands of volunteers in lots of different places, and each chapter is financially independent. It's something that develops with local partnerships in really different ways. There's not one recipe for a chapter. So there's some groups that are doing e-NABLE work where, like in Syria, low number of makers, high number of device users. So it depends on the region. In the online space, there tends to be a lot of English speakers from the United States and more makers, but that's not necessarily the situation everywhere. John?
The one other point I wanted to make is that partly as a response to our oversupply of makers on this side of the Atlantic, we are now expanding our work to include animal prosthetics. This is a new initiative, but for educational contexts in particular, it's also a very good way to get involved. And I wouldn't be surprised if in your neck of the woods there are opportunities there as well. So that's just something to keep in mind. But know that that whole new initiative, which is taking off, is only a month or two old. So you would be at the formative stages of that.
Thank you.
There's some sprouts in different directions. So there's chapters in Paraguay and South America that are doing lower limb devices. There's groups that have really shifted pretty strongly during the pandemic to doing, not just 3D printing and not just prosthetics. There's a lot of things that additive manufacturing can contribute to assistive technology. So there's a lot of sprouts in a lot of different directions. And looking into your local needs is really a great place to start, and partnerships too.
I also did my biology in Ecuador.
Oh, really?
So I've got some connections there that I might be able to take advantage of.
Great. And in terms of regions, e-NABLE has some really long-standing chapters and relationships with teams in South America. There's some teams doing really great work in Asia, in the Middle East, in Africa, but there tends to be these large areas that, and really often the areas that probably could use this kind of technology, affordable prosthetics, free, low tech. There's a lot of places that just don't have the connections to this network yet. And I think the education is really a wonderful place to start with that. So we're seeing a lot of students and teachers that are reaching out in places that don't have chapters. And I think that's sort of the bridge there.
Great, thank you.
I sort of had the same basic question as I looked at the map and looked at a lot of the needs. And so I started thinking more along the lines of what you've just been discussing, of reaching out to locals at the hospital. I have some contacts there, and but also with the vets. that'd be a good avenue to pursue here as well.
Absolutely.
I didn't see a lot of activity of e-NABLE, a couple of chapters in Florida, so it's not a lot here. So I'll see if I can align with others, perhaps, as you say, in another country where I can make and assemble and ship.
Well, certainly look into it. You should be aware that the shipping and the customs complications have been a real barrier for us. You know, anyone in the shipping business, we could use an ally, but it's quite, it has been a challenge. The group that I know of in Florida that I'm familiar with is in Tampa.
Oh, good.
And they're called Helping Hands, I believe. And
Okay.
I did a chapter spotlight with them. I can share the link. The information is a little bit outdated, but it'll give you links to publications that they've made and the chapter leaders.
Great.
Yeah, in Tampa. Great.
and Ben, have you made devices yet?
Yes, I have. I made a couple and have gone through the process of getting them approved. So I get badges.
Cool.
First one I made was a big one.
Nice. And a kinetic, no less.
This is the kinetic.
Yeah.
And that presented some difficulties. Lynn, you were asking about the printer. I bought a printer, but it didn't have direct drive. And when I was trying to do the soft material, flexible materials, I ran into some issues. So I returned that one and got another one that did have a direct drive. But here in Florida, I learned that I still have to have a means of drying out the filament. And that seems to have solved my problems here. The second hand was the standard.
Phoenix.
Yeah. And that process for Lynn, the process of getting them approved was actually quite easy. I had initially, I was concerned about it, but I got to the right spot on the website and they allow you to upload your pictures and any information that you want. And within 24 hours, I had a new badge, and once it's very quick. So now it's really trying to find people that I can help.
Great.
So can I ask the question? So the websites that you all uploaded, I know it talked about, is that how so I guess this is my question. Do I get my printer and then I make my parts and then configure them and then submit them for approval? Or do you send me the parts and then I submit that for approval?
Ben can answer that.
Okay.
The first one, right.
Okay.
So it's something where once you have a space set up and you have your printers, and there's, again, some resources that you can check out to help with that, and lots of people that have wonderful information about the settings and all that stuff, you can start printing out the parts. We used to do fabrication and assembly as two separate badges, meaning you'd make it and then you'd put it together. We changed it and we put those two badges are now a single badge for each device, because putting a device together is a wonderful test of how you did on your printing. So you'll see, I linked in the maker badges. Kevin also linked the badges in earlier. Those are really helpful to show you, basically how we're evaluating, which is just how can we help people make devices that work. So you'll see for each of these devices, like if you click on the kinetic hand, it'll have a list of things that we're looking for, and it's sending in photos and sending in some kind of basic information to get one of those badges. You can set up an account for yourself You can set up an account for your school. Eventually you can even look at becoming a chapter if that's something that you're interested in, but it's not required. A chapter is sort of an extension of the badge system, but there's really active members that are not affiliated with any chapter. So it's just, something that some groups do, but don't have to.
So what is the benefit of a chapter?
That's a great question. And we're trying to have there be more benefits. One benefit is you're on the chapter map. So it's more awareness. I think it can be really helpful for new members to reach out to new chapters. Chapters collaborate with each other. So there's opportunities to, I think, do some networking. We also have fundraising opportunities specifically for chapters. So the Wishbone Project is a underutilized funding opportunity for chapters. So if you started a chapter and you wanted another printer and your school couldn't cover it, you could ask within the Wishbone Project for $500 for equipment, and other chapters could support you. So it's sort of like a chapter fund sharing platform. I'm going to put a link in because we actually have a printer that's available for free. It's right now, I think it's in Chicago, but it's also through that platform, through the Wishbone platform, you can share equipment. So it's not just getting funding, but it's chapters being able to share equipment with each other. So I'm going to put a link in. Here's the Wishbone project, and then I'll put a specific link in for that free printer. And that's something that you just fill out a form and say, I've got a use for this. And then whoever offers the equipment gets to decide who gets the equipment.
Okay.
So
the other
Yep.
advantage of a chapter is just that in many schools or other groups, it becomes sort of a cohesive club that can develop their own initiatives and their own goals and meet on a regular basis and so on. There are groups that do it without becoming an official chapter, but if they do become an official chapter, they show up on the map so they can be found when people are looking for them.
Yeah.
You're not there yet, but
No.
I predict and hope you will be.
Yeah, I think that was one of the, when you asked me what is a long-term goal, one of the long-term goals that was discussed is because we are a military-centered university, and we also, with our new leadership, we are trying to be a military gold, I guess, military-based university, because we're within 20, 30 minutes from the bases. That is one of our goals. And we also have a VA hospital around the corner to be able to provide this resource to them. So that's one of the other long-term goals as well.
Lynn, that's a really incredible resource to consider. I know Ben was talking about, potentially making devices and sending them to people that need the devices. One of the hardest things about that process is it's hard to get feedback. There's a lot of devices that have been sent to a lot of places around the world, and you don't know if they're being used or if the person needed help with customization, or being so close and so connected to the VA and these military bases. It could be a wonderful opportunity to maybe get a group of people that could not only use a device, but provide some feedback, and building that relationship is really fertile ground for learning about prosthetics and having device users not just be receiving, but really leading in their ability to evaluate the devices for daily use.
And by the way, those guys and women have access to very high-tech, high-quality prosthetic devices, courtesy of the military. It takes them 6 months to a year to get it. And furthermore, it's typically an expensive motorized device.
And heavy. It can be
And
heavy.
heavy. So there are a couple of opportunities in there. And don't pursue these until you've gotten comfortable with the process of building the devices.
Right.
But there is an opportunity for an enabled device potentially to function as an interim device while they're waiting for their fancy schmancy device. And secondly, especially in your neck of the woods, a plastic device that can be gotten wet for fishing or for swimming, etc., may be of interest as a secondary device as well.
There's a lot of research that different community members have been doing for adapters. So you can have just like a kit of tools. You're not going to use a hammer for everything. And there's a lot of people, device users, that are really looking for different hands for different things. You know, they want, you know, this color hand to go with this outfit, you know, if they've got some kind of a wedding or a funeral or something like that. But when they're working on a car, they're much more concerned about something that's going to be able to hold the weight of, you know, the project that they're working on rather than the aesthetic. So those adapters, there's a lot of adapters in the device catalog. I'll share the catalog link with you. But that could be of interest to a group of device users. And just as a plug, Monday, we have our next device pilot meeting. That's sort of an online opportunity for device users to come together and share their experiences. It is open for, it's really primarily geared for people with device, with limb difference. But we have the videos online, so you can watch the different sessions and get a sense of what people are struggling with and using. And there's been a lot of conversations about materials and exploration into molding basically around the residual limb to fill in spaces for devices. So things that you might not necessarily think about when you're 3D printing, but wonderful perspectives to help.
Next issue. Questions, comments?
Yeah, so we got about a little less than 10 minutes left. Usually, just as you know, a disclaimer, these meetings tend to be pretty open and just an opportunity to throw a bunch of links in the chat. That's kind of the structure that we've come up with so far. But maybe, you know, a big question for the three of you guys, how could these meetings be more helpful to you? And is there any suggestions that you have for us about ways of improving orientation and these kind of community events?
I guess, Lynn, I was sort of struggling like you in the sense that there was a lot of information there. And I just happened to have some time to be able to sift through it. But early on, I think I had sent a note in saying I was a little confused about something. And I got back a great note, that email that just listed a lot of sites that I should just kind of walk through. And that was a very helpful introduction.
Yeah, I'm with you, Ben. Like that is, I think that was my biggest struggle, because I went on and then I think I logged into one website, but then I actually called the number and then she said, no, get on the hub. And I said, okay, hold on 1 minute, let me get in. Then she said, okay, once you're on the hub, then do this. Then, okay, then I submitted my question, which was, I am lost. And then I got a lot of feedback of, you know, various people saying I did this, but I found this to be better. But I think the one issue that I just had is just my chronological order of how you want things done. I think that was just the one thing. Like, okay, if you want to do this, then you need this, and these are the links. If you want to do this is your link. I think the chronological order is the one thing that was just getting me.
That's very helpful, and we should look at the new member space and just make sure that since that's, I think, the first place everyone gets, that we hit them upside the head with step 1 and step 2. Then they're on their own.
Right, right. I guess it's just that and okay, this is my steps, and then from there I can kind of gauge how I can go further from that.
Cool.
Ali had a comment earlier about the new member space having a lot of e-NABLE bot posts. And currently, twice a week, there's a post that is basically just all the new members and where they're the country that they identify in their membership application. And it does build up. Now, the nice thing is it's wonderful to see all the different people coming from different parts of the world, but it does turn into this laundry list where you think, so we can be working on that new member space.
So actually, Ben, I want to ask a favor of you. If you can find that very helpful email that you found and you post it into the stream of the new member space, we can make that a pinned post if it looks like it's good for everyone. And if it's not, we can use that to figure out what the pinned post should be. But it's true, right now, there doesn't seem to be a pinned post in the new member space.
There is, but it's a laundry list of links.
But it's in the stream, I don't think so, Ben. Upcoming events for new members is what's at the top of the stream. So we can do something.
Click to read more.
Where should I go once I'll get the email, but how do I then get it into a form that's helpful to you? Where do I deposit it?
I will show you right now. So here's the new member space.
Yeah.
And you can post right into here.
Oh, okay.
And when you click submit, everyone will see it, and then we will take that under advisement, either saying, no, that's not what we need, or saying, yeah, we can work with this.
Right.
Excellent.
And John, if you scroll down, you'll see the pin post, and then you click on, you'll see. So now it's open. So with any posts, it needs to be expanded.
Well, that's right. But I think the lesson is maybe we should make sure that critical list is visible even when it's not expanded. We can work on this. That's where we ask the question. Thank you.
Yeah. Great.
So it's a pleasure to meet you all. And, asking questions, however much we improve the hub, it's still going to miss the mark for some purposes. But the main function of the hub, and you've already seen that people are quite welcoming and responsive, is just to ask questions. If you know of something, and you don't have to be overly polite. If you're saying, you can say, thank you for all the advice, but what's the first damn thing I should do? Leave out damn. It will be helpful feedback to us. Okay. Oh, sorry.
In terms of any other last questions? Anybody?
I do.
Lynn?
One quick question. So in the links that you sent about the equipment and materials, and it tells about the person who's doing it, and you have to reach out to them. Do you reach out to them in their email? Because when you click on it, it only shows view list and details and email Jeremy.
Well, that's right. Emailing Jeremy is fine. Jeremy in particular will respond no matter what channel you use. But I will show you that we have a messaging system built right into the hub.
Okay.
And you can click on plus message. And if you type Jeremy,
Gotcha.
it will pop up.
Yeah.
Okay.
And that works.
Okay.
I've got a quick question for everybody in just these final minutes. We've had a theme. People have talked about challenges with notifications. Currently, when you join the hub, notifications are turned on, and then you start getting emails every time there's a post, and it can be overwhelming because there's just all this stuff going on. It's easy to turn that off. I was curious if anybody had any issue with notifications.
No.
Good.
We do a quick scan and I see them coming through and sort of scan what they're about. And if they're interested, I dig into it, like the animal concept, and
Cool.
so you can follow the thread.
Okay, great. And maybe what I can do is I'll show you guys, if you scroll, you don't actually have to scroll down the whole way, but I'll get the link. There was a post about how to turn the notifications off. You can actually just search in the hub, but I'll add it to the archive post. You guys will get a notification that you've been tagged in the archive post for this event, and you can learn about how to turn the notifications off, or just sort of filter them to things that are specific to your interests.
So Ben and I have another meeting starting in -3 seconds. So I'm going to say goodbye,
Okay.
and a
Nice
pleasure
to
to meet
meet
you.
you.
Thanks very much.
Thank you
Right.
for all you've done.
All right.
Well,
Thank
thank
you.
Bye.
Thanks, and I'll add in this link here, folks. Okay, this is about the notification. All right, bye, everybody. Thanks so much for joining.
All right.
How
Thank
can we
you.
save all of your chat information?
I'll copy the whole chat and put it in the archive, so you don't have to worry about doing that, but just keep your eyes peeled for the archive post.
Will do. Thank you.
All right,
Thank
thank